Before we dive into today's story, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if this story moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. Now, let's begin. In the quiet corridor of Brookstone Elementary, Evelyn Carter stood outside the principal's office, her pulse racing. Inside, she could already hear their voices, clipped, confident, rehearsed. When she finally stepped in, she was met with the sight of Mr. and Mrs. Dalton seated like royalty, their smug smiles sharpened into weapons. Evelyn forced herself to sit, though every muscle screamed to walk out. Principal Norris folded his hands on the desk and said calmly, "Ms. Carter, we have a matter of concern regarding your daughter, Lily." Evelyn tried to explain what had happened, how Lily had been bullied for weeks, how she'd come home crying night after night. But Mrs. Dalton interrupted, her tone dripping with contempt. "Your daughter pushed mine," she said. "That kind of aggression doesn't surprise me. A child without a proper father figure always acts out." Evelyn blinked, her throat tightening. "Excuse me," she managed. Mr. Dalton leaned forward, his lawyer's smirk unwavering. "Single mothers often overcompensate, and the children suffer," he said. "Perhaps this should be a lesson in accountability." Evelyn's chest burned. She glanced at Principal Norris, but he avoided her gaze. "Until you sign this apology," he said softly, sliding a paper across the desk, "Lily will remain suspended." The room spun. They weren't just blaming her daughter. They were blaming her existence, her choices, her survival. Evelyn stood slowly, her voice trembling but sharp. "I won't sign this," she said. Mrs. Dalton laughed under her breath. "Of course you won't. Pride runs deep in women like you." Evelyn walked out before her tears could fall. Outside, the air hit her like a slap. She stumbled toward her car, heart hammering. The humiliation clung to her skin like dust. She sat behind the wheel, gripping it until her knuckles turned white. All she could hear was the echo of Mrs. Dalton's voice, "Women like you." She drove home in silence, barely seeing the road. Lily was waiting at the window, her little face swollen from crying. "Mommy," she whispered when Evelyn came in, "am I bad?" Evelyn's throat closed. "No, baby. Why would you say that?" "Amanda said," Lily hesitated, wiping her tears with a trembling hand. "She said my daddy left because you're a bad woman. That's why no one wants us." Evelyn froze. It was the sentence she'd feared for 10 years, the one that tore straight through every scar she thought had healed. She knelt down, cupping Lily's face. "Sweetheart, people who say cruel things usually have ugly hearts," she whispered. But Lily looked unconvinced. "Then why doesn't Daddy come for us?" Evelyn had no answer. That night, after putting Lily to bed, she sat at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. There was one number she hadn't dialed in 20 years, the man who'd tried again and again to be the father she never accepted. Richard Lane, her stepfather, her mother's second husband, the only man who'd ever meant it when he said, "Family doesn't walk away." Evelyn's hand shook as she typed his name. Then she pressed call. "Evelyn." His voice was deeper, older, but still calm, like a steady hand on her shoulder. For a second, she couldn't speak. Then the words came tumbling out. "Richard, I need help." He didn't ask how long it had been. He didn't ask why she'd stayed silent for years. He just listened as she poured it all out. The bullying, the humiliation, the suspension, the cruel words about her being unfit to raise a child. There was a long pause on the other end. When he spoke again, his voice was no longer gentle. It was steel-wrapped in velvet. "Evelyn, listen to me very carefully. You have done nothing wrong. Those people crossed a line, and they're going to regret it." "I don't need money, Richard," she said quickly. "This isn't about money," he interrupted. "This is about respect, about family." The word family hit her harder than she expected. "Meet me at the school tomorrow morning," he said. 9 o'clock sharp. I'll handle it. "Richard, you don't have to." "I do," he said firmly. "You're my daughter. Lily is my granddaughter. And no one gets to make either of you feel small." When the call ended, Evelyn sat in silence, the phone still pressed to her ear. For the first time in years, she felt something dangerous, hope. The next morning, the air outside Brookstone Elementary was crisp and sharp. Evelyn stood by the steps, clutching her purse, terrified he wouldn't come. At 8:55, a sleek black sedan pulled up. The door opened, and Richard Lane stepped out, tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a dark charcoal suit. He moved with quiet authority, the kind that came from years of earned respect. When he saw her, he smiled faintly. "You look just like your mother when she's about to win a fight," he said. Evelyn almost laughed, almost. They walked inside together. Principal Norris was already there with the Daltons, their smug expressions ready for another round. But when they saw Richard, the air changed. "Mr. Lane," the principal stammered, standing. "I didn't realize that I was Evelyn's stepfather." Richard finished smoothly, taking a seat. "And Lily's grandfather. Yes. Let's clear a few things up, shall we?" Mrs. Dalton straightened, her voice falsely polite. "We're only here to resolve this issue respectfully, sir." Richard turned to her, his tone deceptively calm. "Then let's start with your daughter's behavior. Weeks of documented bullying, targeting my granddaughter for not having a father. Cruel words learned from someone, perhaps." Her smile faltered. "That's a serious accusation," she said. "So is calling a woman unfit because she's raising a child alone," he replied. Mr. Dalton leaned forward, puffing up like a man who'd never been challenged. "With all due respect, Mr. Lane, your granddaughter assaulted our child." Richard didn't flinch. "With all due respect, Mr. Dalton, your child assaulted mine first, just not with fists, but with words. And the bruises of those last far longer." Silence fell. Richard turned to Principal Norris. "Here's what's going to happen. Lily will be reinstated immediately. The school will issue a formal apology for mishandling this situation, and the Daltons will write letters of apology to both my daughter and granddaughter." Principal Norris swallowed hard. "And if we don't?" "Then," Richard said, leaning forward, voice quiet but razor sharp, "I'll take this to the school board, the press, and my legal team. You know my reputation. You know I don't make idle threats." The Daltons' faces drained of color. Mrs. Dalton tried to recover. "You're overreacting." "No, Mrs. Dalton," Richard interrupted. "You're underestimating me." Within 20 minutes, signatures were scribbled, apologies printed, and a reinstatement letter handed to Evelyn. Richard stood, buttoning his jacket. "Let's go, Evelyn," he said softly. Outside, as sunlight spilled across the steps, he turned to her. "You're a good mother," he said. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." For the first time in 20 years, Evelyn didn't just feel defended, she felt seen. As they stepped out into the crisp morning air, Evelyn's hands trembled, not from fear, but from release. The weight she'd carried for years seemed to peel away one layer at a time. Richard walked beside her in silence for a few steps, then said, quietly, "You remind me so much of your mother." Evelyn smiled faintly, her eyes damp. "She never gave up on me." "Neither did I," Richard replied. "I just waited for you to call." His words sank deep. For 2 decades she had kept him at a distance, convinced that needing him made her weak. But standing there, watching him protect Lily with quiet, precise strength, she realized she hadn't been protecting herself. She'd been punishing herself. "Richard," she said, her voice breaking, "I'm sorry I shut you out all those years." He shook his head. "You were hurting. You did what you had to do to survive. But now it's time to let someone stand beside you." Evelyn nodded, her throat tight. When she looked up at him, she saw something she hadn't felt since childhood: safety. the kind that didn't demand anything in return. Later that afternoon, Evelyn and Lily sat together on the living room floor, surrounded by crayons and half-finished drawings. Lily's smile was hesitant but real. "Mommy, am I going back to school?" she asked softly. "Yes, sweetheart. Tomorrow." "What about Amanda?" Evelyn brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Amanda's taking some time to think about her choices," she said gently, "and the school promised to make sure you're safe." Lily looked relieved, but still puzzled. Who was the man at the school? Everyone looked scared of him. Evelyn chuckled softly. "That's your grandpa, Richard." "Grandpa?" Lily's eyes widened. "I thought I didn't have one." Evelyn swallowed the lump in her throat. "You do," she said. "He's been there all along. I just didn't let him in." Lily tilted her head. "He looked strong, like he could beat up all the bad people." Evelyn laughed, the first real laugh in weeks. "He doesn't have to. Sometimes strength isn't about fighting. It's about showing up when it matters." Lily nodded thoughtfully, returning to her drawing. "Can I draw him?" she asked. "Of course," Evelyn whispered. "Draw him however you see him." The next morning, the air buzzed with whispers as Evelyn walked Lily into the school courtyard. Parents who had once avoided her gaze now looked curious, cautious, even respectful. Word had spread fast. Richard Lane's granddaughter had been wronged, and justice had been served. Principal Norris himself stood at the entrance, holding an envelope. "Ms. Carter," he said awkwardly, "please accept the school's written apology. We deeply regret how this situation was handled." Evelyn took the envelope, nodding. "Thank you, Principal Norris. I hope this means no other parent has to go through what I did." His face reddened. "It won't happen again." Lily squeezed her mother's hand as they walked inside. Amanda sat at a desk near the window, eyes downcast. When Lily passed her, she whispered a soft sorry. Lily stopped, surprised, then smiled shyly. "It's okay," she said. "Just don't do it again." Evelyn watched from the doorway, her heart swelling. The courage it took for her daughter to forgive was something Evelyn was only now learning for herself. That evening, Richard stopped by their apartment with takeout and an old leather photo album. "Thought we could have dinner and maybe look at some memories," he said. Evelyn hesitated at the door, still uncertain how to bridge the gap of lost years. But Lily rushed forward, beaming. "Grandpa!" she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around his waist. Richard froze for half a second, then melted, his stern expression softening into something pure. "Well," he said with a chuckle, "I wasn't expecting such a warm welcome." They ate together at the small kitchen table, the same table where Evelyn had spent countless nights worrying about bills, school forms, and broken dreams. Now it was filled with laughter and the smell of noodles and soy sauce. "Your mother," Richard said between bites, "was the bravest woman I ever knew. But you," he paused, looking at Evelyn with quiet pride. "You're her echo, the next verse in her fight." Evelyn's eyes glistened. "You really mean that?" "I've never meant anything more." When Lily went to bed, Richard and Evelyn sat in the living room, the lamplight soft and warm. Richard opened the photo album, flipping through faded pictures. Evelyn as a teenager, glaring at the camera. Her mother, Clara, laughing in a garden. Richard in his younger years, smiling proudly between them. "You never stopped caring, did you?" Evelyn murmured. "Not for a second," he said, "but you had to find your own path first." She looked down, her fingers brushing a photo of herself at 16. Defiant, angry, wounded. "I thought strength meant never needing anyone," she admitted, "but it just made me lonely." Richard smiled gently. "True strength is knowing when to let someone stand with you." Evelyn took a deep breath, the truth of it settling in her chest. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing up, for still being here." Richard reached over, placing his hand over hers. "You never had to earn family, Evelyn. You just had to believe in it again." A week later, Evelyn found herself invited to the school's parent assembly, the same room where she had once stood, humiliated. This time, she stood on the stage beside Principal Norris, speaking about empathy, single parenthood, and the courage it takes to raise a child alone. The room was silent as she said, "You never know what battles a family is fighting. Judging them doesn't make your own stronger. It just makes your heart smaller." When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Even the Daltons, sitting stiffly in the back row, couldn't hide their shame. Richard sat in the front row, pride shining in his eyes. Later, as they left the auditorium, he said softly, "You didn't just win for yourself today. You changed something bigger." Evelyn smiled. "Maybe that's what family does," she said. "We build bridges where others burn them." Months passed. Lily thrived, her drawings now filled with light and color instead of shadows. Richard became a regular part of their lives, fixing broken shelves, attending school recitals, teaching Lily how to ride her bike. Evelyn watched him from the porch one evening, laughter echoing down the street as Lily pedaled unsteadily while he ran beside her. She felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness but gratitude. The kind that comes from realizing the walls you built weren't protecting you, they were keeping love out. When Richard came back to the porch, slightly out of breath, she teased, "Still think you're young enough to chase a 10-year-old?" He laughed. For her, always. Evelyn leaned against the railing, her voice quiet. "You saved us, Richard." He shook his head. "No, Evelyn, you saved yourself. I just reminded you that you never had to fight alone." On a warm spring morning, nearly a year after that fateful meeting, Evelyn stood outside the school gates, watching Lily skip toward her friends. No longer the timid girl who'd been called fatherless, but a bright spirit full of confidence and joy. Richard stood beside her, hands in his pockets, smiling faintly. "You did good, kid," he said. Evelyn smiled back. "We both did." The sun spilled golden across the courtyard, lighting the scene like a photograph she'd want to keep forever. As they turned to leave, Evelyn said softly, "You know, I used to think love was something that betrayed you." "And now?" Richard asked. She looked at him, her voice steady. "Now I know. Rayal, love protects you, even when you've stopped believing in it." He nodded. "That's what fathers do." Evelyn slipped her arm through his as they walked toward the car, the years of distance finally erased. Behind them, laughter filled the air. Ahead of them, the road stretched open, a promise of peace, of family, of healing at last. That evening, Evelyn sat by her bedroom window, the amber sunset washing over the walls. Lily's laughter drifted in from the yard where she and Richard were feeding the neighborhood cat. For years, this same hour had been her loneliest, the quiet space between exhaustion and sleep where old wounds echoed loudest. But now it was filled with warmth. She thought back to all the nights she'd promised herself she didn't need anyone, the nights she'd mistaken isolation for strength. She had carried her mother's pain like an inheritance, believing love only came to destroy. But that belief was dying now, replaced by something far greater. When Richard walked back inside, holding Lily's empty cereal bowl and wearing that tired, amused smile, Evelyn caught herself thinking, "This is what home looks like." He glanced at her. "You're staring," he said playfully. She smiled, just realizing how wrong I was about a lot of things. "That's a good kind of wrong," he said. "Means you're growing." She nodded. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally learning that love doesn't always leave. Sometimes it stays and waits." He didn't answer, but the pride in his eyes said everything. A few weeks later, Evelyn got an unexpected call from Principal Norris. "Miss Carter," he began, his tone formal but gentle. "Our board has decided to launch a mentorship program for single parents and their children. We'd like you to lead it." Evelyn was silent for a moment. "Me?" "You inspired a lot of people here," he admitted. "Your story reminded us what resilience looks like." She hesitated, her fingers brushing the scarred edge of her kitchen table, the same spot where she once cried over eviction notices and rejection letters. "I'd be honored," she finally said. That night, she told Richard and Lily about it over dinner. Lily clapped excitedly. "Mommy's famous," she said, giggling. Richard chuckled. "She's something better than famous," he said. "She's proof that courage can change more than one life." Evelyn reached for his hand across the table. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You could have," he said softly, "but I'm grateful you let me try." They raised their glasses of orange juice in a quiet toast. Three souls bound not by blood, but by choice. On the anniversary of that painful meeting, 1 year to the day since Evelyn stood humiliated in the principal's office, she walked into the same school again, this time as a guest speaker. The banner above the stage read, "Family comes in all forms." As she looked out at the sea of faces, parents, teachers, children, she spotted Richard and Lily in the front row, beaming with pride. Taking a deep breath, Evelyn began, "There was a time I believed being alone made me strong, but I learned that real strength isn't about shutting people out. It's about letting the right ones in." Her voice grew steadier. Love doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes it shows up late. Sometimes it knocks twice. But when it does, let it in, because that's where healing begins. The crowd rose in applause. As she stepped off the stage, Lily ran into her arms. "You were amazing, Mommy," she cried. Evelyn laughed, tears shining in her eyes. Richard placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "Your mother would have been proud." Evelyn looked up at him, her voice trembling with peace. "So am I." Together, they walked out into the sunlight, a family reborn, their shadows stretching long behind them, their hearts finally whole. Like and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this, and let us know where you are watching from under the comment section.